This is the After Party. Your hosts are the Great Order and No White Guilt. The crown winner of last week is one and only, our very known, no one could ever guess her name, the one and only Mrs. Jess Horse. Our dear lady gifted a total of 75 Save Our White Baby dollars. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Jess Horse. What a wonderful woman, member and participant of this community. In second place was a participant with a great name, the Last Red Squirrels, gifting 25 pounds all the way over from the Atlantic Ocean, the big pond. Now you can financially gift on Entropy at 15%, where you can watch the stream and ask and vote on questions. Or you can financially gift on Cash App. If you are going to be asking questions or making comments, when you do so with a financial gift, we always get to those, and we get to your questions or comments even if you don't provide a financial gift. Even if we run over the show, we come back to it in the subsequent show. Now, for the next hour, we are going to be discussing my new book, Crucible, Child Patriot, American Victory. But before we get to the final comments about that, I'll just say that we want to give a big spotlight and salute to the Edwards family as they gave birth to a beautiful little Caroline just the other day. Mother and baby are doing wonderfully. James shared the pictures with me. Let's get a big raucous round of emojis for mother and daughter and family, all of them. We wish them the best. Our love goes out to them, and we look forward to those extraordinarily cute baby pictures that we will be seeing in the next couple of weeks and months. Now, if you have read Crucible and you want to comment on it, you want to ask questions, or you haven't read and you have questions, or you want to share your experiences, many of you have had similar experiences that you read about in Crucible, and that's really what Crucible is all about. It is this our story, the story of growing up as a member of Western kind in Western civilization. Every single one of us have had to go through it to one degree or another, and that is this crucible of anti-whiteism that beats us down. Make sure you tag me or Mr. George or both on the No White Guilt channel or on the Discipline with NWG channel, and I will also have Entropy up and running in just a moment. But now, ladies and gentlemen, for an extraordinarily special treat, the one and only Groundhog Fury, the maker of the cover for this book and others, and also the magnificent artist of all of the sketches inside of Crucible. You're really missing out if you don't already own the book for his illustrations alone. The one and only Groundhog Fury and his introduction here to Crucible. American schools are hotbeds of anti-American brainwashing. Teachers and administrators are trained to indoctrinate and enforce ideological conformity. Submission is the norm. Crucible is the true story of one schoolboy's struggle against society's obsession with an anti-American ideology. This young man refused to surrender to the psychological abuse of his superiors and the violence of his peers. In Crucible, Child Patriot, American Victory, two visions of America collide. One is left standing. Amazingly done. Groundhog Fury, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. George, welcome, and how are you? My first time as well, seeing that as everybody else's. What a grand job. And I think Groundhog Fury is supposed to be with us. He is.
Yeah, he is.
Everybody, let's get a massive, raucous round of emojis. That was truly fantastic. And it's actually even the versions that Groundhog Fury sent me. I had to reduce it a bit quickly right before the show. so that it would sit here on the platform and be able to share it with you all from here. But it is even better than you just witnessed it. My first time seeing it, Groundhog Fury, I cannot thank you enough for all that you're doing. Your service to White Wellbeing. You are a true superstar. I just want to say quickly about Groundhog Fury, ladies and gentlemen. He and Sakis as well, who is in the working right now at making a commercial for Crucible, knowing that this is such an important time, such a propitious time to get Crucible out to our brothers and sisters in the magosphere and elsewhere. They both are educating themselves, learning new skills in order to do these services for White Wellbeing. So that is such a testimony to the integrity of these gentlemen, to their tenacity, to the sincerity of their dedication to our people and the work that we are doing here to bring love, hope, and redemption to Western kind and Western civilization. Thank you so very much, Groundhog Fury. Ladies and gentlemen, what a champion. And Mr. George, how are you doing?
I'm tempted to give a Trump impersonation. We have the best people, folks. We have the best people, folks. That's what I could say for Groundhog Fury. Excellent illustrations on the covers and inside of the books, Prometheus Rising and now Crucible, the one we're talking about today. But that was really well done. Big congratulations. And that is true. Sometimes you need to learn new things on the fly. You need to think about what you want to accomplish and then do whatever it takes to meet that. All of us are being challenged in new ways, and that's great to hear. I hear several people saying things like that they're like, I didn't know how to do this, make graphics or edit a video, whatever the case may be. But, you know, you don't have to take some course. We're pretty clever people. We can figure it out, ask around, get some help. Everyone's, willing to help if there's people who have some experience in whatever it is you're doing. But yeah, fantastic. Really, really well done. And I hope that it affects people outside of our immediate spheres as well. That's the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea. And I think it absolutely will. That's going to be an attention getter, and it's going to go up on the website.
It's intriguing.
And yes, indeed. It absolutely is. It drew me in. I felt like, boy, I should read this book. At the time
no bias. No bias.
No bias there, but certainly what a great job, Groundhog Fury. That is fantastic. And let me also, I want to celebrate Groundhog Fury for a minute. And that I want to say that I have had to work with a lot of artists, and especially when it came to Born Guilty, many of you know of the difficulties I had trying to get the illustrations done. It took years actually of working with artists, and the headaches were endless. Artists claiming they could do things they couldn't, and maybe they couldn't, they didn't want to, or whatever it might be, but they wanted the money, and they didn't take direction. I had artists tell me they could do what I asked, and with detailed descriptions of everything I wanted, and then they would come back with whatever they felt was.
So they didn't cross that gap.
They did not, and in fact, I had the joke that I shared on here. What was it, last year, where I showed the sketches. I don't think I have them up anymore, but I have them somewhere.
Was it the pumpkin we were talking about Halloween episode last year?
Maybe it was around then. Well, no, I had the drawing of what I was looking for, an illustration of roughly what I was looking for, and then what they gave me. And it was really comical. But Groundhog Fury, the exact opposite. And this was serendipitous. I mean, it was like fate brought us together. I was having a difficult time getting the cover made for Prometheus Rising, and Groundhog Fury appeared. It was the problems I was having all along with artists, and he appeared, and he did a magnificent job. I give detailed descriptions. Essentially, what I did and how we work so well together is that I give a detailed description. I say what my objective is, and then I ask, do you feel like I'm serving my objective with that description? And he would say, yes, I do. No, I don't. Maybe this, maybe that. And then would produce exactly what I was envisioning, exactly what I was saying. It was amazing. A wizard over a cauldron with the fumes coming up and magic happening. And he would give regular feedback to make sure, the different iterations to make sure he was on a path that we were both liking. And he did that. And then he said, if we put that cover together, truly magnificent. I want to hold it up. Well, I can do this because we have a photograph of it, and I will just share that. And you can see there, beautiful, an absolutely beautiful cover, and you have different layers of meaning there that is being conveyed to the magosphere and everyone. Of course, this is the collector's cover for the presidential election of 2020.
Does that go away right after Election Day? I was
not right after it, but not long after it will go away. So if you want one with that cover, then you have to get it ASAP, because it's shortly thereafter the election, after the big celebration, that cover will disappear. It'll be slightly different, but you can see there a lot of meaning. Of course, you have the MAGA hat, or what looks like a MAGA hat, doesn't it, on my knee, and the illustration.
That would have been a few years before MAGA that you were in middle school.
Yes, indeed. But we wanted to be able to speak to them. We have the viewer who is looking at the cover, being drawn into a participation with the cover, with the teacher writing your ancestors were. Yeah, and then people feeling the need to fill that in, and looking at the teacher, looking at the students. You have the stars and stripes taken down off of the wall, the empty holder for the flag on the wall, and it's been rolled up, and it's underneath this new teacher. It's in that dirty, like the filthy area at the bottom of the whiteboard.
You know, I didn't even notice that. That's a great detail.
Yeah, something else just sort of snuck in there. The bust of Marx on the desk. And of course, you have the veteran, the old senior citizen veteran white man with his military cap on, a paratrooper, and he's in the poster being told to take a knee, take a knee, so a lot of meaning here being conveyed to potential readers. Groundhog Fury did a absolutely magnificent job, and then after working hard on, and by the way, there's so many other things that you could talk for a long time just about the cover, the lettering, and the way that is supposed to look like molten metal or glass. It looks fantastic. He did a beautiful job with it, and I'll hold up the back so you can all see the back of the book. You can see here. If you have not seen the back yet, this is what it looks like. It's like the notes on the desk of a child at school, and then the handwritten description of the book on the back. Splendidly done. Absolutely splendidly done by the great Groundhog Fury. We worked through all of this, and I thought, boy, this guy has really come through once again. And then he said, you know what, Jason? When I was younger, the books I always remember, the ones that stick really firmly in my mind, are the books that had illustrations in them. And I really remember a lot of those illustrations, and wanted to know if he could do some illustrations. I said, absolutely, let's make it happen. What do you need from me? And he needed some description, and needed a sketch from me, and I provided all of that. And we needed some photographs as well for the cover, pardon me. And he took that information and began producing these splendid sketches, and then said, you know what, he did a number of them, and he said, you know what, I want to do some more. And he did some more, and we put them in. We worked fabulously together. And I also want to mention some others. A big round of raucous emojis, please, for the anonymous individuals who participated, others in the creation of Crucible, who made the text far better than it could have been had I done it, or would have been had I done it by myself. So I want to give a big debt of gratitude to others, everybody who participated in the interior of the book, the copy editing, and thank you all so very much. All of the corrections, the emendations, going after those orthographic errors, and suggestions. So a big thank you to all of you, and a big round of raucous emojis for all of that input and time and talent that was contributed in the service of white well-being in a way that is totally anonymous, and is only for I guess that feeling of accomplishment, that sense of service that you truly get when you do something, but for something as glorious as service to white well-being, something that really is the only thing that require your, or that can ask for your life, the thing that gave you life. And also do it in a way that you're the only one that really knows that it's happening. That's truly something special too. And that's essentially what's happening, whether we share your fake name that you use with us here, your nom de guerre, or you stay completely anonymous like these others have. You're really doing it without the kind of reward and adulation that you would receive. The day calls for heroes to step up, and we are deeply grateful for every single, I'm personally deeply grateful for every single one of you who stepped up and participated in the creation. And
how about this? I was just thinking quickly here. How about your costume ball name? One day soon, you'll be able to show your faces and your names. We know everyone has reasons. A lot of people have good reasons for that. But let's make it fun. Let's picture we're at one of these beautiful European masked balls.
Yes.
And so that's just what the avatars are right now, temporarily.
Yes. I like that, Jared. Very good. Yeah, that's what it is. We're at one of these.
We always have to put our spin on it. You know, you always have to make it your own.
One of the European costume balls, those exquisite costumes that we've seen at some of those masquerade balls.
I'd like to attend one day in Vienna or something like that.
That would be wonderful. We'll all take a trip over.
Yeah.
And that's where we finally will take off the masks and reveal who we are.
Hey,
but that's great. Come up behind
things have happened.
Yes.
It's a good goal to go for.
Yeah, that's a beautiful visual. I like that very much. Well, we're here. Yesterday, it came to me as we were getting fired up. Yesterday, I did the stream after PWR, and I suddenly thought, I feel like St. Elmo's fire is just like coursing all over us in the movement and the success we're having. And I feel like that's definitely taking place here tonight. So many wonderful things. Like I said, late last night, James Edwards told me about and sent photos of his beautiful baby. And so happy for them.
Oh,
so many victories.
I wanted to say at the beginning, too, of course, my congratulations to James, his family. I went over to his Twitter and replied, commented on the tweet he made. But let me just say for the record on the show, of course, my love, James, to you and your family, welcoming your third beautiful thing. And all the best. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, we absolutely will have James on to talk about a father third time over and how he can be so happy and their life be so wonderful, so storybook like. Despite the fact that the entirety of the anti-white world despises him and all of the layers, and we've talked about that. We'll talk about that when we have him back again.
If you want a white pill on your way to that Viennese ball, go and type in James Edwards on the afterparty.tv and listen to any of the tap appearances he's been on, or when he's popped by at celebrations like our birthday streams. And he's always just a ray of sunshine. And he's been through a lot. It's not because he hasn't been through a lot. Again, it's because he made it. He made it that way.
That's
he
right.
stayed in control of his own mind and his own being. Something that is a big theme of Crucible as well that I'm sure we'll be talking about today.
Precisely. A fantastic segue, Mr. George, because I was not as...
I've done this a few times.
He's done this a time or two, 1,000. Yeah, I did not... I was not as cheerful as back when I was back in junior high school. And of course, Crucible, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, if you're listening live or in replay and you're brand new to this and you're like, what is Crucible? I know we have a lot of new people coming. Jared, I could tell you the success we're having, the number of impressions we're getting all over the place. So a lot of new people showing up, checking in. And essentially what Crucible is in the United States, in this part of the United States, very often you have something called a junior high school or a middle school. It's between elementary school and high school. They like to take out the 11 to roughly like 11-year-old to 13-year-olds because they feel like that's a little too old for the younger and a little too young for the older. They don't like to mix those necessarily, and especially with sexual maturity and the like. And this was a very large middle school, 1,000 students. So this was not like, this was outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And it was an anti-white administration. And that's important for numerous reasons, because for one, that was what I was going up against. That's with the arguments that were being brought against me were from an anti-white administration, teaching staff, etc., as is the case today throughout academia, but also because they were already trying to achieve this equality of outcome. And what they had a problem with, of course, was a lot of even though the school was not in any way, it wasn't like 51% non-white or anything like that whatsoever. And of the non-white people, there were obviously even a smaller percentage that were actual troublemakers and problems. And the reason for it was that a lot of these bad kids were brought from other schools. They were bussed out to our school. They had
busing, big thing. Yeah, that happened where I was too.
It wasn't, and this wasn't a, just so there's no misunderstanding. This wasn't like, obviously this wasn't the 1960s. It wasn't like, well, non-white kids are being introduced to this school. No, these were kids that were children that were bad, misbehaving where they were. And they said, well, they can't be at that school anymore. So we're going to bus them instead to this other school, because don't you know, if you just put bad people in good areas, that they just become naturally good by virtue of the soil or virtue of the air, or the sunshine is different 6 inches that way or whatever. Well, of course, they did not automatically get good, and they were getting suspended more often, obviously. So they did away with the punishment for fighting, if you can believe it or not. And so fighting became this way that you earn status, and status, we just really leave it at that. What would happen when fights would occur is they would just pull kids apart, and they would say, go to your classrooms. And if you fought all of the time and getting in lots of fights, they might give you 30-minute detention after school, and that would be it. There weren't big suspensions or expulsions or anything of that nature while I was there. So I went in there as a very naive, I guess, innocent, definitely innocent, child into 7th grade. And I was a little ahead of the curve, not in understanding anti-whiteism, but being aware that we were being targeted for some unknown reason. And that stems back to earlier in my life, when I had seen and wondered why we were being chosen, picked, isolated as the bad guys in the tests, in the education, and everything that we were exposed to, cartoons, songs, and the like. It was just one thing piled on the next. So by the time I reached junior high school, the number of reasons for how awful we were, they grew in length. The number of punishments that we deserved, that grew in length. And so I, taking the anti-whites at their word and calling them by the name of their taking, calling them things like liberals at that time, thought, well, they must be harming us accidentally. They must not really mean to be preventing us from taking pride in who and what we are.
Especially seeing the adults. The story is extraordinary in that you went to the adults at times when you were threatened. Precisely. One time, there's a kid that said he would blind you, cause you to go blind. He'd beat you so bad. You're scared. You go to adults. We're talking about a 12-year-old boy, just still on that brink of childhood and the first flushes of a young adult mind, you know? Think back to when you were 12, 13 years old, and looking to administration, to teachers for help. And not only do you not get it, but in a lot of them, there's almost this tacit undercurrent that you deserve it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to school fearing you're going to be beaten to a pulp. Oh, and yet I have some idiot on your comments under the Amazon book saying that, oh, you people don't know how good you have it. This privilege nonsense. Emperor's new clothes. Mm-hmm. It's all Emperor's new clothes. And the same thing going on now. But it's turning around. I had a smile when you said no fighting, Jason, because now, you know, we're seeing serious discourse about doing away with police and prisons, as you well know. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, just pushed out. But it's running its course.
Precisely. It is indeed.
Please go on about what you were saying. I didn't mean to get you off.
No. That's perfect. Yeah, just I ended up asking innocently, is this what you all intend to do? I mean, don't you realize that you are harming us, the white children? And I found out, to my horror, and that's no hyperbole, to my absolute horror, abject horror, that they intended to harm us. They intended to do these things to victimize Western kind and Western civilization. And that, finally, my final realization was that they were benefiting by way of the harm that they were inflicting on us. And you'll see in this story, as people have written me, yourselves, you'll remember, I have people writing saying they remember being terrorized physically and intellectually this way at these ages. And this is already coming into this part of your life with all of the infection of anti-whiteism that you already have. But yeah, this is what Mr. George is talking about right there is really important, because this is the anti-white narrative that the anti-whites are in. And this is one of the elements of the horrific child abuse that we are subjected to when we were children, and that our children are being subjected to right now, nieces and nephews and grandchildren. And that child abuse is this, that even though all of society is structured to give preferential treatment and special privileges to non-white people at the expense of detriment to and ruination of Western kind, and therefore white people as individuals, members of Western kind, even though that's the reality that every single person can look at and say, my God, that's the reality on the ground. It's the reality in the laws. It's the reality in the codes. It's the reality of what they celebrate. It's reality. You are then gaslighted. These babies, these children, these white children are gaslighted, psychologically damaged, psychologically abused, forced to pretend that the opposite is true, that they're the ones that are actually benefiting, that there's this huge system that is enriching them, that gives them the invisible knapsack of white privilege everywhere they go in the world, when in fact reality is the exact opposite. What does this do to the psyche? What did it do to our psyches when we were children? This is the difficulty. And I want everybody to know, and I said it when I was on with Tim, that I ended up in a lot of fist fights. I never lost one, but the reality for me, as I went through that time, as you go through Crucible, is that I'd share as best I can. And it was a little difficult to share the reality of getting into a fight and that causing me to cry, that causing, this big emotional, this fear kind of coming through, feeling the world, the pressure of the world. But the ultimate story of Crucible, as your story, as our story, is a story of victory. We do, through the persistence, not because I'm special in any way, I'm definitely far from that, but because I made the decision to be brave every time I was scared. And I made the decision to stand up for our people. We can all do that, and you have to make that decision again and again. We can all engage in heroic acts and thereby be heroes. This, when you go through this text, is a microcosm of the macrocosm, as Mr. George was just saying, that you saw in the school where they were already removing the punishment for fighting, and now you see as adults they want to get rid of the punishment for a great many criminals in the world. They want to release them from prison. They want to equalize arrests and sentencing and etc. in prisons, and how many prisoners of each race and etc. These are the goals of the anti-whites. So it's the kind of thing that when you work through it, you might have, as some are writing, and I thought it was just really beautiful, and I've got to share more of these testimonies of people saying that they feel like they're going through therapy reading the book. They're remembering all of these events from their childhood where they were pressured by adults, where they were forced to believe things that they saw weren't the case, and what they ended up, how it hurt them day after day. And you'll see, I try to convey as best I can, ladies and gentlemen, in Crucible, that I was terrified. In every single class, I was dreading the bell ringing, because I knew I would have to be out in the halls where I was being stalked by anti-white non-whites who wanted to physically beat me back into place, because I wasn't asking for anything more other than dignity for our people. I was a child. And what really started it all was in that commons area, and then I'll pass it over to you, Jared. In that commons area where the lockers were, the 7th and 8th grader lockers, we had the big shrine to Martin Luther King, and there was no other face, no other bust, no other anything in the Commons except this giant religious-like shrine to this individual. And I merely suggested that since we're in Virginia, shouldn't we have some Virginians out there like Thomas Jefferson or Robert E. Lee? That is what started it. That's what started the anti-white. So you had to be not only deferential to them, you had to be obsequious when it came to anti-whites. And there I was saying, well, how about some dignity for my people as well? I mean, this is Virginia after all. It exists because these great heroes exist of my people. And the consequences came from every direction, but there were also secret allies. And that's something else that when you work through Crucible, you'll discover and just know now in our macro environment vis-a-vis this micro environment, there are secret allies. So we're not alone, but we do have to do everything we can in service to white well-being.
So I get to play interviewer to you a little bit when we do shows like this. And without giving too much away, I think it'll be fun to talk a little bit about the book and the writing. Obviously, there's these timely and heavy topics, and we will, I'm sure, focus on those a lot. But what makes it worthwhile is you still have to tell a story. You still have to be a good storyteller. And so when you set the scene, you know, there are still these vignettes of you just hanging out with your other friends, again, 12, 13-year-old boys, and you do a nice job of providing these different characters. And a lot of us, I'm sure even if you're not in America, a lot of us around the world could probably think back to when we were in school at that age and see different kind of personalities and characters developing in your circle of friends and how you talk to each other. Obviously, there's certain nuances of the day and age you were growing up in, and specifically America and your region of America. But I'm curious, we've talked at length, and anyone interested in this could go listen to the Prometheus Rising special we did in May, or the Born Guilty special we did in December of 2018, because these books were originally contained all in that volume, Born Guilty. I asked Jason a lot about his writing process for Prometheus Rising, because it's written in this older mythopoetic style. And of course, it was a feat of imagination. It was conjuring something out of nothing. It was autobiographical. And I'm curious, were the friends in the book, were they composites of people you knew, or were they actually one-to-one correspondences? And also, just what was the writing process like for this versus Prometheus Rising? I'm almost tempted not to ask, was it easier? Because I think a lot of people would assume because it's based on your life, you know, it would be easier, but not necessarily the case. You still have to weave it with a craft and bring it to life. It's so different. I mean, people thought when Born Guilty came out that two different authors had written these two different works. So if you could speak to some of that, I'm sure other people, if I'm curious about it, I'm sure people listening will be curious about some of those elements as well.
Those are great questions. As always, Jared, you ask the best questions, and which provoke a great amount of thought and revelation. First of all, the people are real people. Those are the names are changed to protect the innocent, if you will. My best friend and all you'll read the story, as you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, just as we lose people who are or we thought were friends. This wasn't somebody that because he was anti-white or anything of that nature, but it was fear of the smear, fear of being physically attacked. So there was a lot of trauma by way of losing those people. And so when even during that writing process, when I was writing about that, it was reliving that trauma, reliving that intense loss. And I have no problem, talking about this. And we should never allow, and we should never do this in the white positive sphere, this whole bromance and talk about this kind of a garbage. Men, this is trying to take this deep bond of friendship away from men that we're able to have, and boys as well. And I had a deep bond like that, especially with the one young man that was my best friend, but with others, I had a lot of friends. So yeah, they were real folks. and they were meaningful to me, and their loss was very painful. It was very poignant. There was a reliving of that. But there are a couple of ways, I guess a great many ways, to have written the book, written the story of that time in my life. So it's not, as you point out there, Jared, it would be easy to misidentify how easy or difficult it would be as fiction versus nonfiction. There's so many ways that the story can be told, and perhaps in a way, one of the things that makes it difficult being nonfiction is that there is like this gravity toward the end. You know what happens next. You know what happens the time. There's nothing. And yes, in fiction, you're going to craft out the totality of your tale, but there's always this manipulation as you're working through it. Whereas in nonfiction, you just know event after event after event. It's a matter of what goes, what doesn't go. And so there was this big gravitational pull. But then there's also this, the element of how's it going to be written? Are you going to, how do you want it to appeal to people? And do you want to make, what kind of a read do you want to make it for people? So there were a lot of considerations like this when I wrote the book. And I wanted it to be in the style of these sort of young adult, and I don't know if I actually accomplished that because I haven't read many young adult books, but this sort of a young adult, but the kind of thing that adults can pick up and read and enjoy and get through quickly, find it entertaining, find the adjectives that in other kinds of writing you just don't see. Like, for example, you won't see any of that at all. They're not going to really describe much of anything at all. And I decided to go with a style that did indeed describe all of the different emotions, the different looks, the way like a look was conveyed, and the way that, so the process of writing it really did require me to pause in my memory at each of those events and say, okay, what really did, his face look like at that moment? What really did it feel like in that moment when? And one of the biggest challenges when authoring it was conveying the intensity. And even though it is like time truncated, how it seems to be protracted inside of a fist fight, because
yes, I did a good job of that. It was cinematic in a way.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That was quite the challenge that I'm sure others have done very well on. I haven't come across, but it is a challenge to convey. And I'm fortunate that I had some others looking at the text and pointing out some things like, hey, from my point of view, since I've never been in a fist fight and my perception of fights is maybe from movies or whatever, this seems like X, but you probably mean Y. And so I revisit that and clear that up for people, those elements. But that was a really difficult thing to convey. And I did the best I could. An actual fight, and especially at that age, was something that at every moment of it, at least for me, was a really terrifying and a kind of thing that made me sick, and happened in like these snapshots. It wasn't like this nice smooth flow. I remember I've read things in the past where the fighting was more like it was some choreographed ballet, where they were like, and throw this, and it was like all of the details that you would have at like the same dinner table scene, or at the dinner table scene, or a love letter scene in the story. It's like the same exact flow of that. And I wanted to really interrupt that. I also wanted to convey in the writing process the moments of when I was a child and how the adults coming to speak to me, how that really affected me differently than two adults having a conversation, even a contentious one, how the child is like this, not only a subordinate in the fact that they are a child relative to an adult, but also a physically much smaller. And so there's this physical menace as well, especially like the scenes where I end up in the offices with some of these staffers, these admin, who are browbeating me. And in fact,
you did a fantastic job of creating this dual awareness of, it's almost like your adult mind goes back into the child's consciousness, and then you're married to the child consciousness, and you remember more viscerally what it's like to be that age, but you still have the faculties of your adult mind to be able to analyze it or enjoy the descriptions. From what I remember reading young adult novels when I was that age, to, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 years old, I think you did hit the nail on the head. And actually, without even having said that, I don't know if you've seen me, remember me saying this in the past, or it's something I put in my comment, my review on Amazon, is that you do exactly that. It reads like a young adult novel. It's a quick read. It whisks you along, but not because it's light. It's meaty, but it turns the pages. Full Moon Ancestry is saying he's read it twice. It got it touched him. He had some strong reactions. I have a comment here that I highlighted. Page turner, builds suspense, intensity in a great way that few books do. So people are vouching for you. We see it. It's well done on all levels.
Well, I really appreciate that from both you and Full Moon Ancestry and everybody else who has a good word about it. We needed to, I felt, as best as my ability and what I could go out and learn, and talking about, Sakis and Groundhog Fury, going out, learning new skills in order to perform a service for white well-being. You have to learn how to write, ladies and gentlemen. You can't, we all think this is one of the professions that people think that, well,
since I use words every day,
right?
I must be able to write.
Right, exactly. I must be able to write a story that'll be compelling and interesting, and folks will want to turn the page. And that's not it at all. Writing is an art. It is a science at the same time, and it's something that you have to educate yourself on to be able to do properly. But I wanted to be able to really tell. I knew that my story in junior high school was all of our stories. And I really wanted to do this in a way that if we could reach enough people with it throughout the magosphere and the like, if we could get it in front of enough people and get folks aware of it, that we could really then do a great deal of good and really change the tapestry that of our country and countries that we endeavor to serve white well-being. So there were some significant parts that probably many of you had to face angry teachers. Probably many of you had to face angry admin, vice principals, principals. You probably had to face ostracization from friends. You probably had to face if you were a young man, or even a young woman, you probably had to face being ostracized from humanity by the females. You probably had, and of course, this was a time when I think most young men are in an innocent way beginning to want to have the attention of the girls, and we want them to want to talk with us, to smile at us, and so all the more painful. And we see in the story I think what we all see, and we've grown up with this reality that we have, and I speculate in the book that we have the young women, the girls, very fashion conscious, not only for attire but also for ideology.
I want to ask you something about this when you're done with this.
Well, please, no, go ahead and ask, because we can go with it.
Well, it wasn't specifically about the females, but that can certainly play into it. I know we've spoken about that before. So we know that underneath all of the programming and all of this is people have a natural affinity. Birds of a feather flock together. Doesn't mean, we don't disparage other people's, but we have a healthy understanding and connection to our own. That's what we're all about here. But an almost equally strong instinct and it's on a biological level, of course, is that instinct to fit in. It's even tied to survival mechanisms, as I think a lot of us know. When you're that age, that age of going through puberty is such a big deal on all of these different levels psychologically, because it's the first time you're self-aware. When you're a kid, when you're still 6 or 7 years old, you run around, you're not conscious of how other people might perceive you. You don't have that. Even if you're an extremely intelligent, precocious kid, you don't have that level of self-awareness yet. That age, that adolescent age, is when we first have that whiff of self-consciousness. And there's oftentimes a very strong social interaction where there's this hierarchy and these ladders that begin to appear. And when you're that age, you might come up against the fact that you have certain talents, but you also have certain weaknesses, or at least how people perceive certain weaknesses in you. And that's reflected back at you, sometimes very frankly and cruelly, in a way that, adults kind of pepper over. But kids can be, as we know, they can be pretty harsh with each other. So what I'm getting at, Jason, is the one biological instinct that's almost as strong and can, in a way, can kind of short circuit the desire to be around those of similar culture and heritage and background, and the norms and the comfort and the reassurance and all the psychological nourishment that comes from that, is this desire, this instinct to fit in regardless. So even if it goes against the grain of, you could have a kid, let's say, who we could easily imagine a kid who came to America from, say, Greece, and his parents are a little old school, and they send him to school, and in like, his mom's like, first day of school, we're going to dress you up and make you look all handsome. And he puts on maybe like a vest, let's say, that has a cultural significance for people in Greece. And that's how his father went to school, and it's all normal from their little village in Greece. And then imagine he goes into a suburban school outside of a major metropolitan area like you did, and all the kids are wearing baggy jeans down to their knees, and it's this ghetto thug culture. He's going to become very aware very quickly that he's wearing this little Greek vest, and it's going to be like people are going to pick on him physically. He's going to become extremely aware, and it's such a sad thing. You could easily picture he's going to go home and maybe not know how to say it to his mom, but then begin to kind of resent her that she's making him uncool. And within a couple of years, that kid is going to be losing all these markers of his family and culture and all these innocent things to fit in with this garbage thug ghetto culture. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, because that's a central theme of the book, and something that you portray there as well, about this idea of short-circuiting that more well-rounded, innocent, nourishing markers of your people. I use the Greek example just because it's something even a little further afield from the States, but obviously there are normative things that all of us from European descent in general, white people, white Americans, would be normal and natural to us when left to our own devices. And yet there's this gravitational pull towards this normalization of the ghetto thug culture, even though the teachers say they're just doing it in the interest of a neutral good. There's no neutral. There's always going to be a hierarchy of what's accepted. Kids implicitly, subconsciously understand that to be accepted, to have any kind of status, they're going to have to go along with this kind of thing. So I'm curious as to your thoughts as to how this psychologically damages kids from that young age, and maybe stays with them for their whole lives. And also what it was like to not go along with that, to stand against the tide.
Well, it's a fabulous question. And it absolutely does damage and does stay with people for their whole lives. We just had a guy, wonderful gentleman, wrote in a testimony about going free. And he said that when he just finished reading Crucible, when he was at that age, he became one of those, and I don't actually spell it out in the book. I put like a little star there for one of the letters so we don't get censored. And I won't say it here, but it is a white person who pretends to be a member of another racial group, specifically usually the inner city version of this particular racial group.
That's another thing I'd like to just quickly add. It's always the worst iteration of their people as well. We want to acknowledge that as well. That ghetto thug culture is not good for any people.
No, it's not good for anybody. And when you see these young, and he said, look, I was this age and I did that for all of the reasons that you stated. It was the absolutely glamorization of this lifestyle of these peoples, where they tell us, and very clearly say in the book, how we were taught by every form of entertainment and media available, education, right at school, academia, that everybody is the same, except non-whites are better in every single way. And I run down like this list of all of these things that we learned. You normally don't see like the sentence so plainly, but when you just use your memory whatsoever, you say, well, you're telling me everybody's better, but then you tell me over here that non-white people are more spiritual. You tell me that everybody is the same, but over here you tell me that non-white people are better athletes. And then you tell me everybody's the same, and it just goes on and on and on. And then these different groups, all these non-white groups, they have peoples, but you don't have a people. I mean, it's all juxtaposed for us, and every one of us can see this, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. It's affecting us in a poisonous and insidious way, because it is denying our right to life. It has made a morality, a supreme morality of inflicting harm on the well-being of Western kind, because the inverse of that is the ultimate evil, pride, for white people. And this is what they're teaching. So yeah, we had this gentleman, he said he made his single mother's life hell because he needed to have the most expensive jeans that would hang halfway down his rear, needed the most expensive shoes for that time, all the things that this ghetto culture was teaching or projecting. And that he pointed out, as just as I do in Crucible, that he's saying was the case for him as well, that regrettably, since we were all being told, all us young boys were being told these things I was just talking about, everybody's the same, but non-whites are better. The white little girls were being told the same thing. So when it came for them time to look out at the males and who were they going to choose, the white guys that ended up pretending to be this other group, dressing like them, talking like them, getting their haircuts like them, they did get the attention of a significant swath of girls, because they were learning the entire time. That's what's cool. That is what is hip. That's what's mod. And so he did have success that way by behaving that way. And yet a detriment to his psyche that has followed him all the way up to his adulthood now.
I couldn't believe that was. Do you remember that when, well, obviously you do, but I remember, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, like, you're kidding, right? We were talking about the masquerade ball in a positive way at the beginning of the show, but this is like a negative form of mask wearing. It's like, you can't be serious. And girls actually, you're acting like this is attractive. I mean, it felt like you were in the Twilight Zone or something, right?
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely did. We, many of the other kids that did not fall for that, we all looked at it, and I think everybody did. We thought it was something was very wrong with those people who were doing that. But of course, there were rewards for those people. That was a way for them they saw a path there. They saw a path to the interest from females. And what it ultimately ended up having, or the result for me, was that I held an idea, dignity for Western kind, that was considered the most unfashionable of ideas imaginable. And as a consequence, the little girls, they had no interest in me. They detested me. They acted, and this was a real tell of anti-whiteism, because they had already learned at that age, 11, 12, 13 years of age, they had already learned that anybody who cares about white well-being has a long, dark history of evil and atrocities, and they treated me as an 11, 12, 13-year-old as though I must have had. They knew exactly who I was. They knew all of these thoughts that I had, all of these deeds that I had engaged in as a little boy, in Cub Scouts. And by the way, as I make clear in the book, I had sleepovers at non-white friends' houses. They had sleepovers at mine. I dinner at their dinner tables with their family members. They dinner with mine. I went to church for a long while, with a friend that was half black, half white. Mother, the father had disappeared. The white mother was now with a Hispanic man, and then his 2 Hispanic children. So it wasn't like I was, this whole idea of the anti-white narrative that
it's status. They're 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls. They just knew, oh, if I hang out with him, I'll be an outcast.
Yes.
That's all. It was just hijacked and warped status hierarchy, is what it is.
It was really obvious that the little girls at the time, they were very concerned with what everybody thought about them, whether it was like their clothing, their hairdo, their makeup, their thoughts, what their beliefs were. So they had to have all of that right. And
there are reasons for that. I mean,
yes,
there are biological reasons we can't expect people to totally transcend, especially at that age. It's just that it's been warped and hijacked.
Hijacked, yes. And then the little boys, they just wanted the interest from the little girls, and so they ended up saying whatever they wanted to hear. They would do whatever they wanted them to do.
Path of least resistance.
Yes, the path of least resistance.
So weak.
It was an absolute.
It's such an inversion. It's like the weakest were given status.
Oh, that's a great point. That's really what it was. And they did demonstrate that. In fact, I talk about it a couple times in the book, how it's the most like sickliest, cringing individuals were the ones who were the most righteously anti-white. And that was what they were feeding. They were inflicting that harm on Western kind. Everybody that they thought that they perceived as superior to themselves, made them feel inferior just by the presence, not by anything they said or did, but just by their presence. And so they wanted to inflict that harm. And you see in the story that there was you had the anti-white non-white kids, but you also had the anti-white white kids. And it was the white ones who were always trying to stir up the not anti-white non-white kids to come and physically attack me. And it didn't take a lot of stirring up. In some cases, all it took was just telling them, well, do you know what that kid Jason said? He actually said that white people are native to the Americas. He actually, whatever it might be. And that would be all it would take, and they would come get me. So this was there. And what do you do? What do you end up seeing as an adult? That exact same thing in our adulthood.
Carrots and sticks.
Precisely. It really was difficult in those moments, especially because I had another route I could go. I didn't have to be the guy who was hated and who was hunted and who by all of my peers, and who was threatened by not only my peers, but also the adults, the superpowers of my world at that time. I didn't have to do that because I was also a star athlete. And I could very easily, I had the option to just go with that and be the star athlete, and everybody.
As you describe, as you thought about.
Yes, many times.
As you wrestled with. Precisely. In that young adult mind, very well described as well. What got you through the loneliness when all your friends had turned their backs on you, and what gave you the strength to not take that path of least resistance and stay that narrow path, righteous path?
That is something that I don't know that I can credit to me, because that might sound, I don't know that I can, I'll just say exactly kind of how it happened. And that essentially, I would analyze the situation, and I would realize at the end of my thoughts that if I just am Jason, the star athlete, then the adults like that, you know, they give me thumbs up. They ask me how the game was. The boys, they all are impressed. And then certainly if all of the boys are impressed and the adults are giving me thumbs up, and the girls become interested, they want to know, hey, well, what's so special about this guy? And that was something I really wanted. I wanted, especially once I had lost all of my friends, and I had a lot of friends, I wanted to get them all back. I wanted to have all my friends back, and I wanted to, as I say, I wanted to have the smiles from the girls and the thumbs up from the adults instead of the condemnation from the adults, the looking at me as though I were some kind of sick and covered with like sores from hell or something. And this
social leprosy, yeah.
Yes, social leprosy. And then I would say in my mind, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go this route. I'm making this decision. I'm not going to talk anymore about Western kind. Of course, I didn't have that name for our people back then. I would just say I would have said the white race. I'm not going to talk about our people anymore. I'm not going to talk about why can't we be proud. I'm not going to talk about our dignity. I'm just going to be the athlete. But what would happen every single time, and this is, I try to convey in the book, it was a real like ambivalence and a real tug of war, a real wrestling, as you say, Jared. What would happen every single time was I would hear a peer or a teacher or what have you say something anti-white. And I felt personally attacked because I felt like they were attacking other white. So how can I phrase, like, other white children were being harmed, even though I was a child. I felt like there are white children in this classroom, and they are going to hate themselves. They are going to feel depressed. This is going to stick with them. Why would the adults do this to us? And I would be.
So you had that protector instinct even at that age.
Yes, yeah, and there was something
a destiny thing there, I think.
I'm sorry?
Well, I think there's a destiny thing there, to be frank. Obviously, it's the role you're playing as an adult. And by the way, I put the No White Guilt store link up so you can buy the book there. I'll put the Amazon as well.
Yeah, there was always be this voice inside of me. And then that's why I ended up in Prometheus Rising with a capital V, referring to the voice. And there was always like this voice, and I don't mean like a literal, like somebody's talking in my head, but a voice, an intention that would say, you will not allow these anti-whites to disparage our people. You will not allow them to harm the kids in the classroom. You will not allow them to do this to us. And then I would just break my decision again and again and again. You know, that decision of wanting just to be the star athlete and go with that, I would break it again. I would not be able to resist. I would immediately throw my hand up in the air, or I would start talking right in the middle of the class, and contradict the teacher, or I would immediately ask the kids in my presence questions that conflicted, and I would defend our people. So it happened again and again, and that really came to a head at the end of the 7th grade, where I completely surrendered, emotionally surrendered, physically surrendered. I thought, this is it. I'm just a little kid. I'm never going to be able to do anything. The whole world is against me. And then I had you can read about it in the book. I had a sort of a I guess what a person could call like spiritual connection through some paperwork of a relative of mine who was a cavalryman in the Confederate Army. And that's when I made the decision that I wasn't going to be undecided anymore. I was just going to serve that voice. I was going to serve the spirit of the West. And for the rest of that summer, and then going back in 8th grade, I metaphorically took the fight to the anti-whites, and I defended myself every time I had to. And sometimes that meant taking steps that scared the hell out of me to take, but nonetheless were things that had to be done if we were going to end up being victorious at the end of the day.
That was the other big note I wanted to hit. And I know I mentioned this when we were celebrating the Trump tweets last month, but since we're talking now specifically about the book, it bears a little discussion and hearing from you on this. There's almost a mimetic element to how the book ends. And of course, I don't want to give away too much, but in doing what you just said, in taking a stand and actually getting on the front foot in a lot of cases, you became almost something of a symbol to the people around you. And we were talking about how all of these people just went with the flow. They saw what the social status, which way the wind was blowing, and they just adopted this totally different way of being. They just did the easy thing. But when you're like a pole and you stand there steadfast, eventually you create your own gravitational pull and things start to shift around you. And it was surprising how certain things shifted, even though they were more secondary products. It's not like you at that age said, I want to have this effect, but it just kind of rippled out. I'd love to hear. It's extremely powerful, and the lesson I most want to underscore. And if I had to tell someone quickly why to read the book, there's a lot of reasons, but that would probably be the first thing I think of, because it bears so much relevance to where we are now in the world, and also how what we try to engender as we all learn together, but in this community and who we're connected with and what's rippling out is, as much as there's bad news, you know, I say this all the time, in 2020, you can use your rational mind to read and just go on Twitter right now, and it's just pick out whatever. It's a garden of bad news. Mm-hmm. You have to stay sovereign. You have to stay conscious in your own being and believe that these things will have an effect. Nothing is written in stone. So you had this mimetic effect in real life, and I want to hear about that. And I know you'll have, no shortage of words to connect to where we are at present.
Well, that is precisely, and this is the microcosmic lesson for our macrocosmic situation that everyone can take away from the story. And that is that if you make the decision, and it's a decision that I had to make over and over, and that is a decision to be brave. That is the decision to do what I, after cogitation, concluded, okay, this has to be done if there's going to be victory here. Things have to be approached this way if there's going to be victory. And then stirring up the courage to act on what had to be done, and having to do that time and again. There isn't one moment, I hope with Crucible, I've conveyed the human element of it. In fiction, we see there's in the story, in the narrative arc, you have a training period, and then there's one decision. The hero is going to go the heroic route, and that's it. Everything just is roses from that point forward, and everything falls into place exactly as it's supposed to. That's not how the real world works, or at least that's not how it worked for me. I had to continue to reaffirm. I had to continue to make those decisions all the way up to wearing that jacket with the Confederate flag that I'd sewn to the back of it. Was the huge statement of this is my rebellion against all this anti-whiteism that you are inflicting on us. I'm not going to take it anymore. And that made a statement. And you're talking about the mimetic effect. People, my peers looked at me, and I think adults, some of the adults as well, as though I were this impossible character that had stepped off of the pages of some story. Now, that was, and I really want to drive home the fact that those were decisions that I was making, that I wasn't, there wasn't a deity that had descended and anointed me. I decided that enough was enough, and that I was going to do what had to be done, and that I was going to do it as a static pole against this current, and maybe even a current against the current. And the more I was resolute, the more I pushed back, the more there was a current with me against what anti-whiteism was bringing down the valley, if you will, toward us. The more there was this resistance, the more there was this history, the more there was. So the impossibility of making any change, of having any success in that environment is this, it felt to me then the same way it does to all of us now, looking out at the world, our governments, our societies as we see them, that it's just this overwhelming impossibility. I know looking back now as an adult, and I don't want anybody to make this mistake because it would be a grievous mistake, to look back as an adult and say, well, that's just a junior high school. That's just 11 to 13-year-old children. And it was big school, but you know, that's just a bunch of kids. This is no, you have to put yourself back in that state. And the distance between the child at that age and the authorities in that building is no difference than the distance that we have as adults to law enforcement and our elected officials and the like. The ability for them and the media, the ability for these people when you were 11, 12, 13 years of age, against these adults who inverted reality, who would bring you in, and you know exactly what's taking place, and this is conveyed in the story, bring you in and invert reality on you. Actually tell me, the one who's being hunted, the one who's being attacked at unawares, that I was the one who was the bully, that I was the one who was not allowing people to share their thoughts. I knew that this was insane, and it was very nearly felt like it would drive me insane. You know, that they were
Chris Wallace, anyone?
Yeah, exactly.
As American cities burn, white supremacy is the main thing. Will you disavow it? I mean, hopefully that's waking up hundreds of thousands of people.
Oh gosh,
total Emperor's New Clothes. It's all Emperor's New Clothes.
It really,
it's like pointing to a bird and saying, look at that fish.
Yes, it is.
Let's go fishing in the sky. Let's cast our nets up in the sky. Give me a break.
So just try to, when you read this, and when you talk to people about this book, and when you're recommending it, make the same suggestion to them to put themselves back in that age bracket. What did their peers look like? What did it look like to have their peers all think a certain way and to disagree with all of that? What did it look like from that age to disagree with the adults? I mean, it was so easy for the kids around me to say, well, history teacher thus and such, you know, says that you are just some anti-white slur or whatever. It was so easy, and it would have been so easy to just give up, to surrender to that, than to continue. And especially then, when I didn't have all the tools of the lexicon and dialectics that we have now in Go Free. I was using all of these antiquated tools, and I still, you know, cobbling along because I was just making the decision. Everything didn't always turn out fantastic. I didn't back then win or feel like I won every conversation by any means, but it created a momentum of its own, and it became a thing in and of itself that was seen by the outsiders, as I was saying, that as though I were like this impossible storybook character that had stepped off the pages and into their lives, especially when I was trotting the halls of this school with a tore up old jean jacket of my father's with a Confederate flag sewn to the back of it. And in an era where they were saying, this is the most demonic thing conceivable. And you had non-white, anti-white students that were violent, that had been brought from other places because of that violence, that had said, oh, we will put anybody out of existence if you're not absolutely overly deferential, if you're not yielding at all points of the day and time when it comes to us and our needs and our wants, and you have all of the adults supporting them, and you have the above the teachers, you have the admin, and what did the vice principal seem like to you? What did the principal, the threats of having to see somebody like that seem like to you? So that it absolutely is a microcosmic example of, as adults, what is the macrocosm for us, and a lesson for me as well, that even now, where we see the Democrats in the United States, anti-whites who call themselves Democrats, even now when they're talking about passing all of these different types of laws and signing treaties and acts and the like that would absolutely do grievous and wretched things to us in our endeavor to serve white well-being. I reflect on the fact that, look, that was just like it was for me in junior high school. That was the exact same way it was for me in junior high school. And I just persisted. I just said, I'm just going to keep going. It's not always going to turn out beautifully, but as long as I keep going, and I made the promise, I didn't have to, fortunately, I didn't have to carry out the promise, but I made the promise that let somebody come, let some anti-white come to fight me. And if I lose, then I will just go fight them again and again and again and again until I've won and they decide to leave me alone. Fortunately, when they came to fight me and to bully me, I was able to win all of those fights. And that was in part because certainly you have the being a star athlete was part of it, and playing football and the intense collisions there. Having my father being a loving but strong, stern man, and having me doing push-ups and sit-ups every other night. Since earlier in life, I was quite strong. But I think one of the biggest parts, and this is what holds true for us here, this is where there's the translation from getting into fistfights as a kid to being an adult and carrying on the metaphorical fight, and that is the mental toughness in those moments, and the purpose for which one fights, whether it was defending myself with my fists back when I was a child or defending myself now with my words and ideas. The mental toughness. And why do we fight? We fight for something that is worth our love. We fight for home and hearth. We fight for our future. We fight for our children. When I was in the throes of those fistfights, I had both the mental toughness, but I also had that passion. They were coming as monsters and they knew exactly what they were doing. There was no mistake. They knew what I was demanding, what I was asking for, what I was talking about. They were coming because they wanted to victimize Western kind, and that's why they swung their fists. I balled mine and fought back for my love for Western kind.
Yeah,
that was the difference in those fights. Have you
spoken about that? Where there's these studies where if Olympic athletes, if they are focusing on not just the grandeur of winning first place or something like that, but they're doing it for love, like they're dedicating it to a family member or something.
Right.
Have we talked about that on air? I forget.
I don't think so. Please go ahead.
No, I know I've seen this phenomenon enough to know that it's not just some fluffy thing. There have been studies about this where if someone is doing something for a higher purpose and it's for love, that actually has a measurable effect on performance. And say that in the same breath too. I shouldn't have to say this, but it's still a good lesson. And we have new people with us sometimes. When we're talking about Jason taking a stand and not acquiescing to all the lowbrow social signaling that he could have taken that path of least resistance, and how things changed around him and he became kind of a symbol, and the end of the book ends on a positive note. That's what we're talking about right now, and its relevance to where we are in the world right now, about rippling out. Your choices ripple out, and you taking a stand sometimes is seen symbolically. Other people are attracted to that strength and that steadfastness we've been talking about. Let me just briefly say, for anyone who may need to hear this again for the clarification, that is not the same thing as adopting your enemy's perception of you and saying, well, because they call us X, why don't we just say we're X? That's a very, very, very different thing. And it's very unwise to be doing that, because we stand on the brink of welcoming in tens to hundreds of thousands of more people right now with everything that's going on.
Yep.
And they're not going to have the sophistication to know that you're being ironic or whatever it is, or you're being esoteric. They still equate Hollywood bad guys. These are the stereotypes. These are the things they talk about. This is what they're interested in. This is how they dress. And if you say, oh, well, they call us this anyway, let's go do it. You're not outsmarting anyone. You're not being clever. You're just hurting yourself. You're hurting what we're doing. So please enter that nuance into your recipe of being discerning.
Yeah, I couldn't concur more. I mean, that's the both with the athletes, and when we see this in military struggle as well, when people are fighting for an idea, for hearth and home, when they are fighting, especially when they are with the Western kind, we need a moral context in which to engage in violence. The majority of us, there are sick members, of course, and we normally weed those out of our society, but we need a moral context. And when we are fighting because we are victimized, we are at our best. So those also who want to pretend or play down our victimization are doing us a great disservice. Those are usually the kind of people who would like to say, well, since the anti-whites are going to call us X, we might as well say we are X. We might as well be X. Same people who want to play down the victimization of our weakest members, and even, of course, our strongest, because even the strongest man, intellectual, physical, whatever it might be, is nothing compared to the might of finance, the might of the masses. So, yeah, without question on both of those points, Jared, and we can right now, this is, and Jared mentioned something else, ladies and gentlemen, the symbolic victories. The symbolic victories that I had in junior high school were bigger than the victories that I had with my fists. Those were the ones where and this is the importance of symbolic victories. Those were the ones where I openly defied teachers, where I openly said, there were a number of times where I openly said, screw it. I'm not listening to another speech about how we are evil people, or we're responsible for X, Y, or Z. You know, I'm 12 years old. I'm not responsible for. I'm not paying for anything. I'm not going to make up. I'm not going to make amends to, you know, my non-white friend over here or my non-white friend over there for something they didn't suffer, I didn't do. I'm not doing any of it. And I would grab my book bag and I would march out of the class. Those were enormous symbolic victories. Trying to put yourself back in those years when you were a child and you saw another child defy the authority that way. Those are the exact same kinds of victories we can have today, is these Herculean symbolic victories. And we do this every day by getting out there, speaking the truth, this truth to the actual anti-white oligarchic power. We are having those types of symbolic victories. And so right now, Mr. George is right that we are on the precipice of appealing to tens of millions of ordinary vagues out there, brothers and sisters.
I like where you went. I said tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I like your thinking better. Tens of millions.
Well, there no doubt are tens of millions worldwide, and
yes,
they are just waiting for people who are willing to stand up against the authority in these symbolic ways, and and we're going to have more symbolic victories along the way as we move forward into history and enter ourselves into those pages of history, writing our names in as the ones who made the decision. Maybe we weren't the smartest or the best looking or the richest or whatever it might be. Nonetheless, we're going to be found on those pages, and all of our other brothers and sisters will come and join us as a consequence, because when they look out and they see that they are defying that superstructure and they're doing it in their way, under their terms. So they are clearly projecting who and what they are to the totality as in refutation to the way that the establishment, the anti-white regime, would love to label them. That is the symbolic victory. You haven't achieved a symbolic victory if you go and you, hearkening to what Mr. George, the wisdom Mr. George just shared, if you go out to a town square in the middle of the night and you look like a video from the black and white video from the 1930s or something, you've done nothing except for play the villain. There's no symbolic victory there by looking like that, and nobody is going to conjure to that around the world with our people. Only folks who are not quite well enough yet to come and be redeemed to what it means to really love our people and defend who and what we are. We're the ones who decide what that is. In fact, there's a part in Crucible where the teachers try to tell me, I try to put together a little club, because we had something called the International Club at my junior high school, middle school. There are some different names for that across the country. And the International Club was all about, I think technically it was supposed to be about any country outside of the United States, but in application, it was non-white. And so they were encouraged and they were celebrated, and this was a wonderful thing. So I thought, if they can have an international club, then I can have a club for white people. And as soon as I tried to put together the club for white people, I had the adults coming to me, telling me what it was. The club that I, as a child, was putting together. And they were trying to tell me what it actually meant, what its purpose actually was. Well, even though I was just a child, I wasn't going to allow these anti-white pigs to tell me what I meant by my love for my people. And so now, as an adult, I still have no problem with not allowing the anti-whites. Mr. George has no problem with not allowing the anti-whites to tell us what we mean when we talk about love for our people. And that is how we have to be. We have too many folks who go down this very destructive road Mr. George is alluding to, where they end up taking up the personas and et cetera that the anti-whites have given them. This is the way you're supposed to act if you're going to care about white well-being. Well, if I could do it as a child, then certainly you all can do it as adults. And this is one of the biggest takeaways from the book, that if we can have this victory in this sort of laboratory, which we had, and the results that we had, if we can have that sort of victory there, then we can have the victory here in the macrocosmic environment that we're in now. So I couldn't be prouder to be able to serve with all of you in service to white well-being, especially Mr. George here. I know that Mr. George wouldn't have abandoned me back in junior high school. He would have been one of the ones that would have stayed true, irrespective of the threat, the fearing of the smear, fearing of the physical threats. I did have to do. I trust
we would have been good friends from what.
Without question.
Right.
Yeah, without question.
This is where life has put us together now.
Precisely. But there are many aspects about this. I guess we can, if you have any other things you wanted to ask Jared, and we can take a look at the audience we have with us today, the great community, and see what they have to say as well.
We see what they're saying. Yep. I mean, I've been seeing what they're saying in the chat, but I mean the super chats, of course, if anyone has any specific comments or questions.
Right. Well, let's, I'll just say again to everybody, you can head on over to Entropy, and the description, or the link is down in the description. There's a question widget there. You could put any questions or comments there. You can financially gift on the financial gift widget over on Entropy. You can also do so on Cash App. You can tag Mr. George and myself on No White Guilt channel. Tag me there as No White Guilt. And you can tag me as Discipline with NWG on that channel if you wanted to turn orange for me, and I'll take a look. I saw a couple comments going by, and I want to thank everybody for the wonderful comments that they said over the course of the stream so far. And I want to thank everybody for showing up to have a conversation about our lives and what we all had to go through as children of the West, and what now is even worse for our children, for our nieces and nephews, for our grandchildren. What they are having to go through is even worse than what we had to go through. So, and I'll just also say this to drive home that point. When I was at, and I talk about this in the story, when I was at that junior high school, that is when it dawned on me that we were living inside of a narrative, a storyline, that it had very little to do with the real world. That the anti-whites, they took elements of the real world where it's supported or could be used to support or misrepresented so as to support and bolster their narrative, what we now refer to as the anti-white narrative. They would use it. And where it conflicted or undermined or disproved their narrative, they would get rid of it. They would not tell you about it. They would hide it. They would misrepresent it as well. And so I said to my peers at a lunch table that I said, and it was such a plea of, like, at your, at the deathbed of a parent, or as a child, and wanting to convey this final thought that would somehow bring them back from the brink. I said to them, my peers, don't you see we're inside of a story? The kids who are here now, we are the bad guys in the story. The kids before, the white kids before us, they were the bad guys. The white kids after us will be the bad guys. The story is not going to change until we change the story, until we get out of this story. It will never change. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if any of those kids will remember that were there that day. I don't know even if they're still around. Who knows, with pandemics and everything else going on in the world. But what I said that day was one of the truest things I have ever said in my life, because all of these years later, that school still stands. And who are the bad guys in that school? The white kids who are there. Generation after generation, year after year, trapped in an anti-white narrative, an inescapable anti-white narrative, an unwinnable anti-white narrative. But there is now a path to freedom. There is a way to get off of these pages, and we call it going free, getting into our own story, a practice that you employ for the totality of your life. And then you can finally be something other than the villain. Then you can finally, if you decide with your will, to be the hero in our story, and that we so just vehemently plead with you to do. We welcome you. We give our hand, and we'll pull you out of that quicksand, out of those drowning waters before it's too late. Seika says here, thank you so much. Dear Seika is doing so much for White Wellbeing. $5. He's financially gifting those $5 in the name of Lamont Riddick. Well, thank you so very much. We've had a lot of questions about Lamont, and who really went by the last name. I want to make sure I don't accidentally say the real name. But and who knows? I'm sure that guy's probably in prison for life. He was an unsavory character if you ever saw one or heard of one. And I had to. There was only one way to handle that kind of a person, and I handled him the appropriate way. $5 from Sakis in the name of Lamont Riddick, which I'm sure he's in prison.
Maybe he turned around.
Maybe he turned around.
We can only hope.
We could. We can hope that
we always send our best.
Well, that's true. I agree. We have Lisa here as well. And thank you so very much, Lisa, over on the financial gift widget, $5. Thank you so very much, Lisa. And writes, much love for our people. Much love back to you, Lisa. Thank you for that. That is very kind. And that's where this comes from. This is love. There would have been no way. I mean, let's just be realistic, ladies and gentlemen. Read Crucible, and you'll see that there would have been no way I would have been able to make it through that. I mean, just make it through it. Not even talking about being victorious. If I had been motivated by something other than love. And it was pure love that enabled me to overcome the pure terror. It was pure love that enabled me to endure the punches to my face and to other parts of my body, and to keep fighting back. It was pure love that caused me and enabled me to stand up in the classroom and tell anti-whites, whether they were teachers or guest speakers or whatever, to go to hell. It was love that enabled me to do those things when I was scared as all hell. There would have been nothing else that could have enabled me to do it. If I had been playing the villain or anything of that nature, I just would have been this ugly shadow, that this like shadow being, as these people end up being. They end up just spending their time where shadows normally do, on the walls and on the floor, instead of interacting with the real world, looking ugly and being two-dimensional. That's the truest thing that has to be known. One of the truest things that has to be known and understood about playing the villain is that you are just like the shadow I described. You are the villain, and there's nothing more to your life. You don't have love. You don't have a beginning. You don't have an ending. You don't have likes and dislikes. You're just a villain, a flat character in their story. Brothers and sisters, you've got to be the one to decide to be that three-dimensional you, and to represent all of that, and to do so in a way that doesn't allow the anti-whites to pigeonhole you as something and stereotype you as something other than you are, to dehumanize you. And it's going to take a lot of courage, but I have no doubt that you'll be able to do it, and we'll be able to spread this to many others throughout the white positive sphere before it's too late. Over here on Cash App, Mr. George, we have, let's see, the great DB Cooper is coming in here with
Classic.
10. Yes, the $10. Thank you so much, DB. And he writes here, for our third child was born Tuesday, we named him Jason. Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Wow.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
This is amazing. Congratulations.
Congratulations, brother. Congratulations on the child. I assume the child is true. Third child was born on Tuesday. And if that, deep congratulations, DB Cooper, for that. And please,
wow.
I mean, that's magnificent. Congratulations. And did you really name him Jason? That is truly, oh my gosh, how humbling. If you're joking, that's hilarious. I'm going to laugh my ass off. But if you seriously did that, that is extremely humbling. Wow.
Chat. I'm getting his attention in the chat. But that's tremendous.
That is really remarkable. My hat's off to you.
On the James Edwards news, lucky threes today. James Edwards third, and now DB Cooper's third. All love to you and your family.
Yes, all love to you and your family, your wife, your children, and your in-laws, everything. I thank you so much. Deep loves goes out to all of you. What a wonderful financial gift. And I'll fall off this chair laughing if he's joking. I tell you what, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, DB Cooper. He's a great champion. He's been serving with us, White Wellbeing, for quite a little while now.
One of the first names I remember since we started this show.
Yes, absolutely. Magnificent, DB Cooper. And we have here, this is Art Acrobats, another one of our champions, and here I see it right now in the live chat.
Yes.
Financially gifting $5.14 specifically. Thank you so very much. And right here, 14 reasons to be involved in InfoWar. Well, thank you so very much, Art Acrobats, ladies and gentlemen. $5.14. Thank you, dear brother. Another great champion in service to White Wellbeing, and great to see you in the live chat. And we're going to see wonderful things coming from Art Acrobats, ladies and gentlemen, in the future. This I can also tell you. We also have I Love Jesus Christ with us. Hello, dear lady. Glad to have you here. Financially gifting $5 as well, and saying everything she had to say with those $5. Probably $5 in the name of all of those anti-whites who jumped me when I was in junior high school because I dared to stand up for our people.
What about a super chat for Mrs. Swan?
Mrs. Swan.
The teacher, wasn't there a Mrs.
For in her name, yes.
In her name, I'm sure the name was changed.
Yes.
For a moment, but the one who went up to you and whispered, "I support you."
Yes.
That was pretty powerful.
Yes, we have friends where we don't think we have friends, and ladies and gentlemen, even now, we have friends where you would think we wouldn't have friends. So keep that in mind. But it should embolden you. It should embolden you to work that much harder. This is the advanced placement. We make things happen here. We are the catalysts for the change. We are catalyzing from the state that we are in to the state we want to be in. So know that you have big metaphorical guns with you. And for that reason, feel all the more braver to charge the beaches rather than sit home on your laurels. So this is the great Zero Talent. Financially gifting $5. Thank you. Another wonderful participant. And writing here, I'm late, but not too late to give my folk tithing. Well, thank you so much for that, dear brother, and great to see you here.
Thank you.
you're never, things don't get started until Zero Talent shows up anyhow. So thank you for being here. And another great champion, this guy, talk about those big fireworks at the end of the Independence Day celebration. Slots, $5 financial gift. Thank you, dear brother, doing amazing things. This guy going out, I just want to mention, it's like every week we have more to mention about what Slots is doing, not only in the trenches having the debates, actually employing, which is what we're supposed to be doing, the lexicon and dialectics. He does it. He gets out into Twitter and he has these battles. But he also has been posting a Crucible on, I believe it is Minds, maybe, or one of these platforms. And he has been using his own money to push it, to get these pay-per-clicks, and to get it out to as many of the MAGA people as possible. And so a big salute to you, Slots, for all the hard work that you're doing in service to White Wellbeing. Another champion, $5 writing, thank you for your work. Well, the feeling is mutual. The feeling is definitely mutual, my brother. And okay, that covers there. Let me swivel back around here, make sure we're okay. And we have the great Mestizo here. And he did a video on Instagram. And he says, how does it go, Mestizo? Something like, my name is, and then he says his name, and I'm going free with no white guilt, something like this. And then he suggests that other people make short videos like that. And he writes here, hail Jason and Jared. Big congrats to James Edwards. Yeah, big congrats indeed to James Edwards. And great to see you here, brother. And thank you for your service for White Wellbeing. Well, if you all have any questions, let me swivel around here and I'll see. And if we have anything on the Discipline channel, looks like we have the Dear DF, Lady DF is with us. Landon is with us. William is with us. Jesse Link is with us over there. I'll swivel back around over here. And Sean, I see, and R, Pow, Jane, Mr. and Nordic Iron, and I mentioned our Misty is with us. Lisa, yep, got you. The great Ezra St. White is with us, another great champion doing wonderful things. The magnificent Fornull, another, and of course you mentioned earlier one of our stupendous contributors, Full Moon Ancestry, is with us.
Mrs. Jess Horst is here, and also I hope she doesn't mind saying, I'll just say the first name. I think she's new, but Jane says she's glad she found this stream. So that leads me to believe that, Jane, you're relatively new here. And we know we have new people all the time. Some people like you say hello. Some people don't even participate at first. But we're always very, very glad. This is not a special club or clique or something where you need to know special code words. We're just normal people who care about our people, down to earth, and all types here. And we're very glad you're here.
Yeah, precisely. Thank you so much. DG is here. So it had a nice voice. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Sean is here from down under, saying, was the bullies stole someone's cap? Did they steal someone's cap? But I don't remember having a baseball cap like yanked off my head or anything like that in junior high school. But yeah, there were plenty. There were a lot of these. I saw somebody wrote something about the cry bullies. They were indeed. They ran right off to the administration to complain about. They would bully me, and then I wouldn't back down. I might defeat them in an argument, and then they would run right off to the authority to complain about me defeating them in a conversation, defeating them in an argument. And yeah, cry bullying the entire time. The ones I end up defeating, who came to physically assault me, no doubt that they too went to. That's why I had these scenarios where they said, "Well, we heard you were trying to fight this person or fight that person," totally inverting reality. That's how that, of course, ended up happening. Matthew says, "Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well in the white positive sphere. A great show today with Mr. Murdoch. Earlier I was with Tim. We did have a fantastic show. He's a great guy, and deep thanks to him for having me on. Jared, he actually read portions of Prometheus Rising and Go Free today. It was
that's great, and we'll have to nab that and put it up as an outside appearances kind of post on the afterparty.tv.
I agree completely. Groundhog Fury is here. There was some talk months ago about revealing what happened to Lamont Riddick. As I recall, you said you would tell only after Crucible was out. You didn't say how long after, though. Ooh, that's a good, yeah, I do remember saying that it's after, once Crucible was out. At some point, I would say exactly what the last I knew about Lamont Riddick. And I don't know if should I say the last things that I saw and know about him. I don't know where he is actually today, Mr. George, and I hope that he turned around and became a much better person. But maybe I'll leave the teaser out there. Groundhog says he's curious. I'll leave the teaser that he was on a trajectory that you can see in the story. By the end of the story, he was on a trajectory that wasn't leading to good things. And then I ended up seeing him. Maybe this is as much as I'll leave it here, so it can continue to titillate those who want to know about Lamont Riddick. What happened to this guy? Continue to titillate. I ended up seeing him somewhere, and at night, and he recognized me, and I recognized him, and that is all I will say for right now, to titillate you all with what could have happened next.
Somewhere at night.
Somewhere at night.
That's pretty vague.
Yes, yes. And I was at that point, I was much, I had defeated him, of course, but we won't say more. People read the book. But
in a WWE style cage match.
Yes, but
well refereed and safe.
Yes, but by the time we came across each other again, I was much larger, much stronger. So I will leave it at that, and we will leave everybody on the edge of their seat wondering, or those who were wondering. Now they're even more curious. What happened when they came across each other at night and recognized? There was a moment. I'll say there was a moment of like eyes connecting and knowing exactly, he's saying, holy, that's Jason, and me saying, wow, that is his real name. And let's see, what else do we have here? Iron Will, great to see you, brother. Hello, brother. It's been a while since being here. Family affairs have kept me busy. Kudos to you keeping your composure on that. I guess I'm not going to, I know what you're writing there. I'll say the non-white debate that the debate that Mark had with an anti-white non-white person. And it was a bit of a show, Sierra show of a debate. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was, we handled that. And we anticipated it would be that way, Mark and I. We just didn't know it would go bad that quickly. But it was it ended up really highlighting and literally juxtapositioning those who care about white well-being and the anti-whites inside of their story, and that they would like to slit your throats, and highlighting that if you don't have might to protect truth, justice, liberty, love, and all that is holy, then the might of somebody like this Ghazi would be there to slit your throat on the basis of bizarre superstitions. Art Acrobats writes, the first statue we create in the Capitol will be of the white guilt. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so very much. I don't know if you can find somebody that looks better than I do, but I appreciate that. Thanks. Sean says here, tag you're it. Okay, tag back. Thanks for that, brother. We have, I'll look back over the Cash App in a moment, and let's see. We have, hey, Jason, just want you to know I saw a handmade sign saying no white guilt on the highway today, along with some others calling certain politicians anti-white. You are reaching people. This is from cis white male with extra privilege. That's a drink, I think, at Starbucks, isn't it? That is amazing. Where, well, are we on Twitter, both of us? Are we friends? Can you DM me? Can you tell me where this was? This is magnificent news. I mean, we just have Newt Gingrich, and these are part of this first row. These early adopters who just said, now we don't like that he tacked on the word racist to anti-white, but we're reaching out to him to try to change that. So we hope to be able to change that. But these are people who are adopting because of the work that all of us are doing. Tim Murdoch, Jared, George, James, we're all doing this. All of you who are here today, Fernal, Full Moon Ancestry, so many others, Final Blossom, great work. And if we're not on Twitter together, cis white male with extra privilege, reach out to me. Go to nowhiteguilt.org. Try the contact me, the widget that's on the page there. It seems to be working more. I know that because I've had a couple of anti-whites write me there, and I think maybe I'll have to share it on Sunday, some of their comments, writing every letter in caps and just telling me, wishing so many wonderful things upon me and everybody I care about. These are wonderful folks. You could try that, or you can also try, and please reach out to me. You could also try the nowhiteguiltcollectibles.com, and there's a connect with me there widget. You can write to me there. So please reach out. I'd like to know where this is taking place. Thank you for letting us know. What another great victory that is. I mean, it's happening quickly, ladies and gentlemen. You better get on board now. I see Misty here, and great to see you. I think I mentioned you. Mr. right after Misty, great to see you. And so wonderful to have everybody here with Mr. George and myself. If we could, I know I can speak for Mr. George as well. We would love more than anything to pull up a couple of chairs around a fire, maybe in this time of year when, I mean, this is the time of year that Mr. George and I both really, truly love. And the air is getting crisp, and the leaves are doing this brilliant, the trees are doing this brilliant show for us this time of year. There's something, there's some connection between Western kind and the environment that I think we touch upon in Prometheus Rising. But we would love nothing more to be able to pull up chairs around a fireplace with every single one of you, and be able to break bread like the family that we are. And I think we both feel that way while we're with you. I see Mr. Kanazi is here, Hyperborean Dream, Diane, T Money, Mr. What is that? Strontium Dog is with us. So great to see you all. If you all have any questions, we're only gonna be here for a little while longer, and we can, maybe I could open up the Crucible and just randomly read some section of it for those who are curious. Shauna Shaw is here. Great to see you. And oh, we have this Nuno is I'm not going to know how Pas White Guilt and is no white guilt in French.
I just caught that too.
Thank you very much. Carol is here. Great to see you, dear lady. Catherine as well. Eternalism. Wonderful to see you here with us. So is Jerome. Great to see you as well. And I'll take another look at Cash App and make sure that we didn't miss anybody. It looks good. Looks like we didn't. I will spin around. Looks like everything is good over here. And yes, indeed, we're good. Let me check over on the monitors over here. And we're good over there as well. All right, then. Yeah, any questions, folks, before we check out about Crucible or my time in junior high school, or anything you might want to know about how I was able to resist, fight back, physically, emotionally, mentally. I mean, I had, as you all might imagine, and what I want to convey in Crucible is that you all can do this. You all can accomplish these things. I'm no different than the rest of you. I had the nightmares every night, almost every single night, that I was going to be jumped and that I would be mauled. When I saw the other kids fighting before I got into the fights, I couldn't believe the ferocity and the speed. It was terrifying. I had the nightmares. I dreaded the moments between class. I dreaded the moments when I was going to have those conversations. I had to have those conversations with peers, when I had to have the conversations with teachers, with admin, being called down to the office. I felt my stomach sink when I realized that each of one of my friends that abandoned me, that sickness that you get, the girl that I had wanted to impress, that I wanted more than anything else to show interest in me, to give me smiles, when I found out that she would never have anything to do with me because of my views, because I cared about our people. I didn't have any negative views, and I want to point this out. I didn't have any negative views about white people or non-white people. I wasn't saying that. I wasn't focusing on. I was a child. I wasn't saying, oh, look at all of this and look at all of that. Look at all that they do over here. There was no endless talk of any of that. I was merely talking about us being treated fairly, us being treated the same way, us being allowed to be to celebrate who we are, us being allowed to be proud of our history, us not being blamed for everything that had gone wrong, us not being blamed for every non-white's inability to succeed or do whatever they wanted in life. That's all I was talking about. And for a child's innocence in asking this of his peers and of the adults, I was treated the way I was treated, but nonetheless, we were victorious in the very end. There's the great Donning Armorers with us. Groundhog Fury says, how did your parents react when they saw your face after the Riddick fight? Well, that's a great question, good brother, and thank you for being up with us tonight. Every time I came home and I'd been in a fight or in a scuffle, and now mind you, you have to appreciate that I was like most boys, and so I went out, I rode my bicycle in places I shouldn't, I climbed trees that I shouldn't, I fell out of them, I crashed on my bicycle, I crashed on skateboards, I crashed in go-karts, you know, a lot of things. We wrestled and horsed around, and you get an elbow to the ear and it swells up, or an elbow to the eye during you know, having fun, and of course with playing sports too, skin wiped off from that. We had crazy accidents, just silly kinds of things that happen to boys.
Did you skateboard at all? See,
yes, we grabbed.
I was thrown up into the air and then like jumping onto a bed, just full body onto the concrete.
Oh,
bad skateboard accident, man. I was screwed up by that for a while.
Oh my gosh, I bet you were. Yeah, the skateboards, they were dangerous. I still have my skateboard. I
do too. I custom made one. I went to this cool bike shop where you could say, I want that board with that design on it and these kind of wheels, and I had the guys that custom made it. This was like the thing. I had a friend that got a custom made one. I was like, I'm gonna go get a custom made one.
That is fantastic.
Still have it, yeah. But the thing is, I put the trucks on. I had them do the trucks too loose, so I liked it loosey goosey, like quick turns. I went down this hill and there was like sand at the bottom of it. It was gravel, but it was a huge hill. And this thing was just swerving all over the place. And then I flew horizontal into the air, and then my whole body down on it. I had to go home. My legs were covered in cuts for like a couple of weeks. I think I had to take a nap. My mom was worried I'd have a concussion. But this is, that's boyhood.
Yes, it's boyhood.
For any of you mothers preparing to have sons, get ready for that. But that's a good thing. It's healthy.
It is healthy indeed. And so in that light, I mean, I came home occasionally with things busted up. So when I came back and there was a question about had I been into a fight, my mother was obviously condemnatory, and she would lecture me, don't get into fights. So what's the matter with you? You're going to end up, you know, on and on and on. And my father, though, on the other hand, he wasn't a man of a whole lot of words when it came to teaching lessons. And he taught a lot of lessons without words, which was a very powerful technique. And with looks, with setting up circumstances. And when I would come home and he would see that I had been punched in the face, and like was the case there, pretty uglied up as a consequence of getting hit and bashed around so much, my father would just simply say in so many words, I mean, I can't remember exactly the exact words for that specific incident, at least not off the top of my head, but in so many words, it was, how bad did he look? And that was really, and I would just say, it was very simple back. I would say worse. And then he would just nod, and that would be the end of it. He had already taught me earlier in my childhood that if you want to be a man, he said, you're a boy now, but if you want to be a man, the man doesn't fight if he doesn't have to. A man only fights when he has to, when he can't get away, and in those occasions when you can't get away, and you'll know that the other person means you grave harm. You'll know in those moments that you're going to have to act, and act quickly. So he had already taught, and I had already adopted that as who and what I was going to be, that there would never be like any bullying or anything of that nature. So he knew that if I had gotten into a fight, it was because I had been jumped, or it was inescapable. And all he was really concerned about at that point was, how bad did the other guy look? We really came from my father was down home here in Virginia, used to be, back in the day, used to be the South, hard, and still sections are. But they had what they would affectionately refer to as recreational duking. And guys would get together, they might get really angry. They would punch each other a number of times. And then there was none of this like really mauling the person. Once one guy said uncle, or if a guy got knocked out or whatever, that was the end of it. And if anything, they would, the guy who had won, if the other person had been knocked out or something, would help them out in those cases. But yeah, that was really, thanks for asking that, Groundhog, because I'm sure people are wondering, like, what did your parents do when you came home all jacked up? Yeah, I guess it's somewhat predictable, the lengthy lecture from the mother, because she's very concerned about every little scratch, and then the father just wanting to know, how did the other guy turn out? Let's randomly pick a spot here. Oh, maybe should I pick that one? Maybe it's apropos. I just randomly opened the book to what I was, and then we'll see if there's any more questions or comments or financial gifts, and we'll see what else Mr. George has to say. And then we will check out for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, another big victory for all of us. And this is chapter 27 in Crucible. And there are a great many chapters, by the way, to enable those who are not really comfortable with reading, don't do a lot of reading, to feel every time they sit down that they're getting something accomplished, because you'll be able to finish a chapter every time you sit down. And so you'll have that sense of, okay, yeah, I got something done. Yeah,
for that. It flows.
So this is chapter 27, and it is called Clause. And I will just read a bit of this. We'll see. The bell signaling the end of class and the beginning of a 6-minute period between classes had just rung. In need of a notebook, I briskly headed toward my locker. Navigating through the rambunctious crowd of book-bag-burdened students, I approached a group of non-white kids. Their number and exaggerated movements formed a blockade that spanned the hall from wall to wall. Many of the non-whites at my junior high school were notorious for parking themselves in the path of foot traffic, being as tempestuous as possible, and daring anyone to object or to give the slightest sign of disapproval. What you looking at? Why you making that face? You got a problem? Were typical responses when they sensed others were displeased with their behavior. Hugging the wall, I sidled up to their lurching huddle, but just as I approached, the piercing loud voice of a non-white girl delivered a cryptic punch line. And then I'm going to jump forward a bit and see where I will pick that up, because this is one of those scenes that we were talking about earlier. Quickly distancing myself from their rowdy barricade, I continued toward my locker. Moments later, and slightly more composed, I entered the Commons, which was a popcorn popper of activity. I had just opened my locker door when it was fiercely kicked. The ear-splitting crash and livid shouting disoriented me, causing me to drop my books. Nearly convulsing with fright and feeling like I was losing consciousness, I spun right and stepped backward. An 8th grade gangster glared down at me. Boiling with rage, he stormed in my face. Effing gringo. My mind wasn't working. I could only understand bits and pieces, shouting, angry and eager faces, a crowd of students, non-white boys, egging on my attacker. Kick that mother F effer's ass. Kick his ass, haha. The gangster's features, twisted by volcanic rage, loomed over me as he pointed his finger in my face. Some of these words I won't be able to read. Shit. And that mother effer, he hollered incoherently, his eyes flaring with scarlet veins. Horrified, I suddenly realized I was trying to speak, but I only stuttered. Da, something wrong with you, mother effer? He mockingly demanded of me, to the laughter of the crowd. I shook my head as he took hold of me, punched me in the face, and flung me through the air, riding me to the floor. A second later, I was on my belly, my left arm protecting my head and face. He was over me, to my left, with his right knee on my back, throwing fisted blows that pounded my head and neck. My thoughts were jumbled, shock, fear, pain. And then the why fled, the confusion dissolved, anger as a searing tempest stormed into me. And that, I think I'll leave it there. Page 96. Things change from that point in the altercation forward. You can find out by reading Crucible, ladies and gentlemen, which is available in both paperback at Amazon.com and also at my NoWhiteGuiltCollectibles.com store. You can also get the Kindle version at Amazon. It is now available in Kindle as well and accessible to you all around the world. And let's see what else we have here as we wrap up. And let's see, what else do you have there, Jared? I'm looking now, and I do not see, unless I'm missing something, anything in the background here.
People were asking about last-minute comments or gifts, but we're getting ready to wrap up, everybody.
We are indeed. And we have had
we were talking about how much we love October. I'm not going to say any names unless they tell me it's okay to say, but a lot of people are saying that they have birthdays in October in this crowd tonight. So happy birthday to you who know who you are.
Yes, happy birthday to you who know who you are. A big happy birthday. And I'm sure that person is thanking everyone who says that. Let's see. Okay, we just taking a quick look at the chat, and I'm going to head back over to the Ezra saying, "Why, thank you very much for writing that." Says Jason has the most exciting writing. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
By the way, Jason, it was funny to hear you, even the censored version of curse words, because you don't speak that way. So it was somewhat amusing to hear you reading that on that level as well.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I bet it was. I suddenly realized as I was reading through that, I thought, uh-oh, that has some material that I'm going to have to.
It's a spicy passage. They're not all like that.
No, not the whole book. Not by any means. Those are just a couple of spicy passages that are in the book that are
little spice
relating what things that we really like. And now let's get a raucous round of applause together for the one and only, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only. The only way that she can do it is the only way that it could be done. Mrs. Jess Horst, $50 financial gift. Thank you so much. And she writes here, in the name of Kamala, I love it, who got destroyed, absolutely obliterated by Pence last night. Thank you so very much. $50 US in the name of Kamala Harris, who had, I swear this Pence came out landing some haymakers on this woman. And I maybe talk about it on Sunday, but there's so much there that it was one heck of a debate. And we're glad that Pence did so very well. $50, Mrs. Jess Horst. Thank you, dear lady. Well, Mr. George, anything else before we wrap up tonight, talking about Crucible with our wonderful friends here in the White Positive sphere?
Well, I hope everyone got a good sense of it as we celebrate the release of this book on its own, the standalone version. And I put the links up a bunch of times. You go check this out and replay on the afterparty.tv. On Jason's side, on my side, it'll have the appropriate links where you can purchase it. But I hope we did a good job kind of giving you some different perspectives and tastes of what the book is about, the dimensions of it. And it's a pleasure to talk about it. I always like these times that we can celebrate milestones, certainly, but also times that we can kind of get under the hood of things. And it's always fascinating to hear a little bit more about what was going on, especially in someone that I know and am friends with and care about, like you, what was going on in your head, in yourself when you were writing something or creating something. So always a fascinating insight to get to know people I care about more as well. So hopefully it was for the audience as well, for everyone listening live now and in replay. But I don't have anything else to add except my site is thegreatorder.com. What I do can all be found there, ways to contact and support, and there's a catalog of all work that I do and things that I share, video and otherwise.
And do follow Mr. George, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, you know that the afterparty.tv is the place that you have to go. You have to bookmark it because we never know what's going to happen with the anti-whites. They are doing everything they can to censor us. Jared, George, and I rarely share with you all that's going on behind the scenes with the difficulties with them because we don't want to build them up anymore than they need to be built up in the problems that they cause us. So make sure that you bookmark that. Make sure that if anything weird is going on, get used to going there. Get used to also, occasionally watching the show there and finding our material there. Of course, both of our websites as well. Jared just mentioned his, and mine. We've mentioned that as well today. Bookmark those so that we can all stay in touch, despite what the anti-whites might do here and on Facebook and anywhere else. Make sure you do that. But after doing that, make sure that you follow or you sub to Mr. George on YouTube and everywhere else that he is on a platform, because even though the anti-whites are doing everything they can to keep those numbers low, his subs low, my subs ridiculous, the efforts that the anti-whites go through. Even though that's the case, these sub counts, whatever they are going to serve a lot of those vagues out there when they come in and they come upon these channels and they say, how many people are interested? And this, I'll tell you, when they see a channel 5,000 or 10,000 subs, they don't necessarily conclude what you or I might conclude, that, well, maybe 9,000 of those people subbed at some point and they're not necessarily watching anything else ever again. They're going to think there are 10,000 people, there are 5,000 people that are supporting this. Be one of those people. Be one of those subs. Mr. George has great content, beautiful content over there. He does a show, an additional show with John Bruce Leonard. He's getting ready to release his first musical tracks. He's going to do one at a time. Yep. You all want to be ready for all of that when that comes out, and we want to share this and continue to grow the culture, the art that we are applying, the flesh that goes on, the psychological defense for the psychological warfare that's waged against us and going free. All of this is critically important. We have to create that culture. We have to continue to feed back into it. So make sure, find Mr. George, his content, his platforms, and sub to all of that, and then share these as well. And I want to salute everybody out there and I just shared with Mr. George one of the leaflets that was created by one of our great heroes, and created a leaflet and had Mr. George's website and my website as well. I think the tap was there as well.
Only put up in legal, safe places.
Yes, always.
We don't advise anything other than that.
Precisely.
Always legal, always safe. Check with your community first.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's a wonderful thing. Get this information out, because it's a network. It's a I don't want to say, well, maybe we could say it's one of those in summer after or early in the morning when the dew is still clinging to those beautiful spider webs. That's what we're creating, that beautiful artwork that the spider creates over the course of night, that is then laden with the morning's dew and twinkling in those first rays of the sun. That is what we're doing here, so that people can find many ways in to the center, many ways
weaving.
To go free.
We're not going to eat you though if you get caught up in the
We'll
web.
try not to. We'll try.
It's a web of goodness.
It's a web of goodness.
Best people.
The best people here in service to White Wellbeing. And I want to thank everybody who was with us today. I want to give a big thank you to everybody who financially gifted today as well. A big thank you to everybody who contributed in the conversation. If you decided to stay back as a wallflower, that's fine as well. We welcome everybody who's brand new. Please come back. Please sub. That you have abilities and talents that you can't even fathom. And there are people here who are beginning to access their latent abilities because they have been going free. We want you to go as far as you are capable of going to remedy those ills, to remedy those wounds that you've experienced over the course of your life, because we have all grown up in this anti-whiteism. And your suffering is to greater or lesser extent due to that anti-whiteism. We welcome you and we love you and we thank you. And I think what we'll do is, Mr. George, I will click the commercial that the great Groundhog Fury has made. Yes. And we'll close on that. So at the end of the stream, at the end of that commercial, the stream will then go down, and Mr. George and myself will see you all back here next week on another episode of TAP. Love you all, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye now. American schools are hotbeds of anti-American brainwashing. Teachers and administrators are trained to indoctrinate and enforce ideological conformity. Submission is the norm. Crucible is the true story of one schoolboy's struggle against society's obsession with an anti-American ideology. This young man refused to surrender to the psychological abuse of his superiors and the violence of his peers. In Crucible, Child Patriot, American Victory, two visions of America collide. One is left standing.